All right, I've had a chance to play Far Cry 6, which is coming up next month from Ubisoft on a variety of different platforms. Ubisoft gave me some hands-on time with this thing. I played about 5 hours of the game, and I had a good time with Far Cry 6, and I was expecting to have a good time with Far Cry 6. It has 6 in the title, and they've made a lot of sequels. There's been spin-offs. They know this formula, and the formula has been adapted and tweaked and changed a little bit with Far Cry 6. There's a great big deal of emphasis on customizing your weaponry, and you've got these amigos, these animal characters, which we've had in previous Far Cry games before, but they take a much bigger role. You can send them out to go and kill enemies and take a bunch of stuff from them, and then you can go back to crafting tables and take the stuff that your amigos will go and get and put them into your weapons. You also get this super weapon kind of backpack that's called the Supremo in this game, and you can activate that and you'll shoot out rockets or health packs or something like that, which was a pretty cool element to this. And the way that you level up in Far Cry 6 is really tied to the loadouts and the weaponry and the augments that you add to your different guns and things like that. And then as you start to change out your loadouts for different purposes, you start to accumulate strength and power. So you'll be able to go to all of the enemy bases and things like that. Now, the story centers around a fictional Caribbean island called Yara, which is run by a dictator named Anton Castillo, played by Giancarlo Esposito, an incredible actor who is such a nice guy, but is really proficient at playing scumbags. And he is indeed a scumbag, and he's training his son to be a scumbag as well in this. So there's a kind of this weird emotional hook there, because you want to see the empathy in the kid. But, you know, he's got Darth Vader for a father, basically. And he's very mustache twirly. You see people getting tortured and things like that, even in, early on in the story that I was able to partake in, which they started me off at the beginning. And so what happens is at the beginning is there's this, pretty horrific cut sequence where we see Castillo's goons are killing unarmed civilians. You play a character named Danny Rojas, same name as one of the best players on Ted Lasso's soccer team, by the way. And Danny Rojas can be a male or female, and you escape from this initial torment that's presented in the cut sequence to an island, and then you join up with this rebel force called the Libertad, and they give you a bunch of missions, and you're kind of trying to show that you're trustworthy. You're in it with this fighting force to stop the oppression of Anton Castillo, who has accumulated all of his wealth and power based on what has become cancer-fighting drugs that he has been able to grow on his island country. But of course, there's a much darker side to this, and people are ruled with an iron fist. There's a lot of innocents that get slaughtered. And all of it plays with a sense of familiarity. We've taken down some pretty heavy power brokers in previous Far Cry games before. I did like that we get to see the characters and we get the cut sequences. It's not all first person. We actually have third person kind of interactions and stuff, and we get to see some of the character design work and stuff that's been applied to this game. It's a good-looking game. It's not a great-looking, state-of-the-art experience at this point.
But I promise you one thing. I will be feared.
Viva Libertad. Viva Libertad.
You can see that there's still a pretty strong foothold in previous gen visuals, because this is obviously out for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, to give it the widest system install base possible for a game that looks like it costs a tremendous amount of money. This is a big map. You're going to be exploring this outer island, and then eventually, which is, quite tropical, and you're picking up busted jeeps and things like that, and eventually you're going to go into towns and things. I did explore a couple of more stealthy areas where I was taking down a bunch of bad guys on a couple of ships, and that brought some echoes of playing through some Metal Gear Solid missions, which I enjoyed. But, there is absolutely this streak of familiarity all the way through this. And just a quick note about how this game is kind of facing criticism because it uses the backdrop of a, oppressive or fascist-ruled could-be communist country in the Caribbean like Cuba, and the developers of the game went to Cuba to soak up some research to sort of make make the game feel quite authentic. I get the criticism, and I think we all want the video game development community out there to kind of progress forward with its maturity and its storytelling and to give us games that sort of hit harder on political fronts. But that's not this franchise, you know? And frankly, that's not been Ubisoft's take on any of their games, whether they've been Watch Dogs, even Assassin's Creed, which pulls directly from history, takes a lot of artistic license with the way that they tell their stories and present their characters. But Far Cry is so comical. You actually have an amigo that is this rooster with, like rockets on its feet. And so it runs really fast and it kills people by pecking them to death. And I mean, it's just silly. You also have like an indestructible little Chihuahua dog that has no hind legs and runs around on wheels called Chorizo. I mean, I get the criticism and I get the desire for wanting game makers to, push forward on their stories. But we're not quite there yet. And we're certainly, I think, pointing the discussion around this at the wrong damn franchise.
Over here.
Far Cry has always been a parody of life in a way. Everything is over the top. It's closer to a Rambo movie than it is, an Oliver Stone examination of a crumbling society somewhere, That being said, I understand the desire for the video game industry to kind of, and critics and consumers in the video game industry to want more of developers out there. And maybe that's something that Ubisoft has to take in and apply to a future franchise. But I bet it won't be Far Cry. I mean, look at what Far Cry 5 did, taking all the preppers in Montana and turning them into the enemies and the people he had to kind of face, and talk about what everybody's been going through the pandemic and how close to home some of that noise and hostility within the American borders kind of represents right now. It's crazy, and something tells me that there would be even more controversy around Far Cry 5 coming out right now instead of Far Cry 6. So, long story short, I think if you're a fan of Far Cry, you're going to find some new things to enjoy in Far Cry 6, but it feels like a Far Cry game. It absolutely does. I will review it, though. I'm going to play more of it when I get it, but I had a good time with Far Cry 6.